But today, I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, f the game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'll never stop it.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always flirting with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building a dynasty while the haters be trying me, but they hate from inside.
Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted here on the Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. Your host, Dustin Reese, a.k.a. Stat Guy, and joined by Tennessee Smokies play-by-play announcer, Mr. Mick Gillespie. Mick, thanks for coming on.
Hey, how's it going? Doing great.
So, got to ask you one thing before we get into everything here. You can say you're a champion. The Tennessee Smokies won a championship for you this year. How does that feel?
It was great. I mean, it's been a long time, 45 years, and a lot of teams over the years that got very close and didn't win it. And so to finally see them win was great. For the players to have that experience, you know, for the front office and the city to get one. And the way that the team did it with, just absolute dominance was great. We didn't have any drama. It was just a good old fashioned beatdown. So I loved it.
And you're not just involved with, obviously, Chicago Cubs baseball, which we'll get into in a little bit, but you're also involved with Alabama football. And Alabama football just went through, I think, one of the more shocking moves that I don't think anyone saw coming, with Nick Saban announcing his retirement following the Rose Bowl loss to Michigan, and then Kalen DeBoer, who was the head coach at Washington, coming in to replace Nick Saban. Just kind of with you kind of being on the ins and outs of the Alabama program, did you see Nick Saban retiring? And I guess, how did it come about, I guess?
Yeah, I went to Alabama, so that's kind of how I got involved with the Crimson Tide and spent years working there. Like, my winter job was Bama and my summer job was the Cubs. Still kind of is, right? And, I cover them really closely now on my YouTube channel, Bama Tailgate, and I've talked about it a lot. I heard certain people saying that there was a chance that he was going to retire. I didn't think that it was going to happen, but when it did, it was sad and surprising. But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's 72 years old. He's the best that's ever done it. But the losing the coaches, the assistant coaches, was very tough for him, because he'd have to coach those guys and then the players. And so every year you're cycling out coaches at Alabama. There wasn't a lot of loyalty to the program over the last 10 years with the coaches. They're there and then gone normally after a year to go on to bigger jobs. So I think that was part of it. Obviously dealing with the parents and the middlemen of some of the NIL stuff, and the transfer portal probably wasn't something he liked a lot. But 17 years of winning. I talk about this when I see people in the Cubs front office, just how I've never been around anyone who was able to to basically win and then move on to the next thing so fast. And the Cubs won in 2016. we just couldn't get past it. I mean, we still played it's, it's like marquee. How many times a year are you going to play the 2016 World Series? And I get it. Like we didn't know we were ever going to get that, but could have been another one or two, if the team would have kind of been able to put that aside and move forward, which I saw at Alabama. Nick Saban was kind of the guy that would constantly remind everyone that was last year. And now this is this year, and really, like, that was what last year's team did. Let's talk about this year's team, And so that's how he got to the championship so many times, won 6 of them, was there a bunch. And he's the best ever. So I was surprised by that. Now, you asked me about Kalen DeBoer. I think that's a great hire. I mean, like, Michigan beat both of those teams, Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. And Washington did a great job. This is one of the best coaches. It's going to be interesting to see the fit, being from South Dakota. But I think winning is a fit for everyone. I think if you come in and win, it doesn't really matter where you're from. If you're good at the job. And what's surprising to me, and I've seen this in my business of broadcasting, and and I've heard people talk about it with coaching, and so worried about where someone's from, and if you're from the United States, I mean, shouldn't you just be from the United States? If you're not from Chicago, doesn't mean you couldn't go up there and be a great radio broadcaster. As a matter of fact, some of the greats weren't from Chicago. Matter of fact, all of them weren't. And I think it's the same thing with football coaches. You don't have to be part of the Alabama Nick Saban tree to go in and be successful. Very short-sighted. And I think that DeBoer's doing a really nice job coming in, recruiting. We lost some of our best players to the transfer portal, and really it's become kind of unorganized free agency. But I've seen a lot of progress going the other way now that DeBoer's been, going on 2 weeks.
Yeah, and coming up the season Washington had, I didn't see DeBoer leaving, at least not that quick, considering how he's only been at Washington for like 2 or 3 years. I kind of saw, I think Mike Norvell's name was mentioned in the Alabama conversations, but I honestly thought Lane Kiffin might try to kind of tip his head into that, knowing that he was an assistant under Saban for quite a while. He's had success as an assistant under Nick Saban, and I thought, you look at the success that he's had at Ole Miss, it's realistically the only teams he was never able to beat was Alabama and Georgia, and he pretty much took care of everybody else on his schedule. So I honestly thought Lane Kiffin was going to be the one to replace Nick Saban, so I was kind of actually shocked to see DeBoer go there.
Lane Kiffin there's a lot of character issues with Lane Kiffin, according to my sources. Mm-hmm. And I think that if it was just the coaching aspect of it, he would have been a great fit. But at a university like Alabama, you got to have someone with a clean track record. I think we all remember that Joey Freshwater stuff that he was involved in. And, there's obviously he really had, he was immature. And maybe he'd probably tell you that, but I think a lot of those issues that he had off the field cost him that opportunity to be Alabama's football coach. And the other part of it too is some of the trolling that he does on social media is immature, and it's just not becoming of Alabama's football coach.
The Jay Gruden of college football.
Yeah, I just think it wouldn't have been a good fit, but he's a great coach. I mean, look, you can't take a hit the way that he calls offenses away from him. His ability to do, to scheme up on offense and call plays and recruit, he's great at that. And also something else he does well is evaluate talent. And that's something that, you have a whole department of people that do with the Cubs. And in college football, it's the same, but he's able to, he's one of the reasons that Alabama had those 4 wide receivers that were so good, Judy, Ruggs, Waddle, and Smitty, and Smitty won the Heisman Trophy. So there's a lot of stuff that he does well. And I just think that Ole Miss is probably a good fit for him. Just good fit.
And I know, like you mentioned, the transfer portal and the NIL thing, but the other big thing that we're starting to see in college football now is the creation of the whole super conference thing, where the SEC is now getting Texas and Oklahoma next year. The Big Ten added 4 teams from the Pac-12, and then the Big 12 added 4 teams from the Pac-12, and the ACC added 2 teams from the Pac-12. So there's no longer a Pac-12 anymore at this point, which, as good as it is for college football in terms of the competition, it's also kind of, I think, a bad look for college football too, because you have a team like Notre Dame who plays an independent schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on record for a long time saying Notre Dame either needs to go to A, the ACC, because they're in the ACC for everything else, or B, they need to go to the Big Ten because half of their schedule is pretty much Big Ten teams anyways, like Michigan, Michigan State, and that. Because now you're going to run into a situation where how many games is Notre Dame going to be able to play during a college football season, because all the teams on their schedule are going to be locked into that super conference schedule now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the future of college football is very, very foggy right now. They've got to do something with the transfer portal. You just can't have guys transferring anytime they want. There has to be some kind of limitation on it. And then also, how do you deal with the NIL? I mean, what we saw Ohio State just do and go out and spend $13 million and take away some of, the best players from other teams and openly recruit some of those guys while they were still on another roster. And every team's doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that needs to end. I mean, the NIL thing was supposed to be, I'm doing like Bryce Young, won the Heisman Trophy, was on some TV commercials. His NIL was that he earned through what he did on the football field, the opportunity for businesses to want to use him as their spokesman, or, if someone wants to do an autograph signing, they should be able to keep the money for that. Or if the university wants to sell someone's jersey, they should, but it shouldn't be a recruiting tool, which we've seen. And honestly, it's a shame. I mean, it really is. It's a shame to amateur athletics, which it's not anymore. And, I've kind of blamed the Supreme Court for that, just hey, we're going to let you do that with no guardrails. And then all of a sudden it's just created this. So I don't know. I hope that for the sake of amateur athletics and college football, they can figure something out. But eventually it should go to a super conference. I mean, think about it. I mean, why would you want to play Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan when their whole roster is going to be paid for? Mm-hmm. And, you may be a smaller school and you don't have any of those guys paid for. I mean, there's no way you're going to win. I mean, they're going to have the better players. And I mean, it's really turned into NFL junior, NFL light. And so, we'll see what happens, but I really do see the super conference thing happening.
And now we'll kind of get into some Cubs baseball talk, which is obviously what you do for your full-time summertime gigs 6 months out of the year. And the Tennessee Smokies had, like you said, their first championship in over 40 years. It's been a long time coming, but when you look at the talent on that roster, I think it was pretty much a given that they had the talent to get there. It was just more about could they finish the job. And after letting Michael Ryan go in the middle of the season, I think a lot of people questioned the kind of the direction that team was going in, but they ultimately finished the job this year as opposed to last year. They couldn't finish the job. Yeah. Just kind of thoughts on the Tennessee Smokies season as a whole this year.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many different things, like when you and you kind of look at the way that the season went down, and hated to see Michael Ryan go. Really like him and kind of the intensity that he brings to the ballpark every day. And it was a tough job watching him leave. And then, Kevin Graber, who was the field coordinator, kind of taking that role. And Graber did a great job. I mean, I don't know that you could have put any other personality into that role and had as much success as Graber did. And Graber came in with a lot of positivity and, wasn't really planning to do that job, but did it and did it really well. So that was a lot of fun to see the Smokies kind of, the stretch run that they had and then to win the championship. A lot of talent on the team. To me, top of the list, obviously Pete Crow Armstrong, Hollywood Pete. You want to have fun, go back and watch some of his highlight reels with the Smokies. He was great. He's an exciting player. I know that Cubs fans on my channel, Cubs baseball channel on YouTube, will say, well, he didn't do too good in the big leagues. Well, he was only up there for a little bit. And I think one of the reasons that I was critical of David Ross, who I like, I like Rossi, but felt for those guys because I think they could have been contributors to the Cubs making the playoffs, and it just seemed like the vibe there wasn't working for them, and that's his responsibility. You got to develop these days in the big leagues, even though it used to not be like that. Hey, I'm up here to win. Well, yeah, but you're also up here to develop because they have cut teams out in the minor leagues that used to, and this isn't Rossi's fault. I mean, it's just the game right now, right? They cut teams, entire leagues, and then now you get drafted like Matt Shaw last year, and you're in Double-A. They used to not be able to do that because it's a skill game, and even someone as advanced as him, still could have used that extra seasoning to get there. And you get to the big leagues and you look like Christopher Morel. It's like you do a couple things well. And then there's other stuff that you just don't know yet, and you can tell with where his game was. He hits all the home runs, and then you put him in the field, and there's mistakes, and base running, there's mistakes, and I'm sure it drives your manager, nuts, and that's why he's in AAA and then came back. But then when the guy can carry you for a week, I always thought he reminded me of Alfonso Soriano in that aspect, where and when Alfonso Soriano got to the Cubs, I mean, he was a player who had already been into the big leagues and had success. Yeah. But there were times where he could just carry a team, like he would just get hot and, for 2 weeks he'd win games for you. And that's kind of how Morel is. But Morel's got to get the rest of his game to a point where the Cubs can put him on the field at all times, and it's that third base. He's not going to play second with Nico there. And I don't think he's an everyday shortstop, although they got Dansby anyway. And now they've got all these guys that can play first base, so he's not going to be there. So is it third, or is he a utility guy, or the Cubs going to trade him? And I know that Jed's and Carter both kind of said, hey, we're not doing that. I think that with the right deal, you would trade him. But I wouldn't give him away like they did Nelson Velasquez. I mean, I would make sure if you're going to give him up, you get a piece that matches what you need. And to me, that would be obviously like young prospect catcher, because the Cubs have absolutely nothing right now behind the plate.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of in the same boat as you two with David Ross. It's frustrating because you look at his 2016 season when the Cubs won the World Series. He was part of a roster that was built around prospects.
Right.
The prospects got called up to obviously struggle, because as a prospect, you're going to struggle. But they got called up because they were going to be the contributing pieces of the future.
Right.
PCA, Alexander Canario, Matt Mervis, and a lot of these players that they brought up during the season last year. Mervis struggled. But when you compare Matt Mervis's first 100 career at-bats to what Anthony Rizzo did in his first 100 career at-bats with San Diego, Mervis had better numbers. He had a higher batting average. He had more home runs, and he had more RBIs than what Anthony Rizzo did in his first 100 at-bats. So it's not like Mervis was a bust. Canario saw action in 2 games, which if you're going to call him up, you might as well have just left him in Iowa to give that guy at-bat, since he missed 4 months of the season anyway. So that really did help him. Same with PCA. You were calling this guy up to be a defensive specialist in the late innings. You were calling him up to be kind of that X factor on the bases, and you started him 2 games and didn't play him pretty much the rest of the way.
Right.
And for a guy that was part of a team that thrived off of having all these young pieces in the lineup, I thought David Ross would kind of have a better understanding of what to do with these young pieces, since he experienced it with 2 years in Chicago in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of pressure when you're there to try to win. And you look at the whole body of work, and there were a lot of things he did well. But when it came to that stretch run, the lack of days off for some of the everyday guys and not taking advantage of the young guys to kind of use them to fill in, before everyone was gassed, hurt them. And, but I'll say the other part of it is, like I just said, these guys get there and they're getting there so fast that they're not ready, like Chris Bryant and Javi Baez. And there wasn't a lot of pressure on Chris Bryant and Javi Baez.
No, not at all.
The team sucked, and it was like, hey, we're going to get these guys there. Joe Madden, the perfect manager for a young team, play. And they won ahead of schedule. But Madden's whole thing was trying to make a controlled, comfortable atmosphere, which eventually always seemed to turn into no control, which is what happened at the end. And that's kind of why Rossi was brought in, to kind of have someone that could relate to the guys, but at the same time get the best out of them, and get the, and he did that, and then, but things changed, the roster changed. I wish him the best. You hate to see bad things happen to good people. I thought it was a great move by the Cubs. Surprising, but I feel bad for Rossi at the same time too. I mean, it was very unfair. But sometimes that's how life and sports are, but I don't know. I think that you could blame it on him. And I think there's part of that there. But you could also blame it on player development.
Yep.
And the philosophy in that we're not, you're going to get promoted before you master a level.
Mm-hmm.
And Morel's a great example of that. And now they don't know what to do with him. Kyle Schwarber was the guy they did that with. It was supposed to be a catcher. And then I'm watching him every day and he's not catching. He's batting. And he was one of the best batters, but he wasn't one of the best catchers. And now, he's a superstar in the postseason and a great player, but he's not very good in the left. And, at DH, perfect spot for him, or, but never catcher. And I don't even know if he's ever even caught, man. Maybe a few times.
I think he caught 9 games in 2015, and then that was pretty much it. Because then they just moved him out to left for the
a lot of pass balls. I think I remember that. Man.
A lot of pass balls and overthrows.
Yeah. But he could have done it. If they would have been patient. And I'm seeing the same thing. But it's not just the Cubs. It's just the whole philosophy right now. We got to hurry and get these guys to the big leagues. But once you get to the big leagues, when you do the same things in the minor leagues, it's overlooked. Hey, this guy threw to the wrong base. This guy just got thrown out, and he's stealing in the wrong count. He's out of position. Runner at third, 2 outs, and he doesn't make contact. But you go to the big leagues and you do that stuff. All of that is magnified.
Yes, it is.
So I think that's kind of where it is right now. But having someone like Craig Counsell, what he was able to do in Milwaukee was make a comfortable environment and help those young players assimilate with the big leagues and transition and have success. So I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen, because the Cubs have a really talented minor league system right now. It's different than it was when Javi and those guys came through, because I don't really look at the Cubs and say, hey, they have those like super duper can't miss stars, right?
Yep.
With that said, I look at it and I go, man, there are a lot of dudes here. A lot of dudes. Like, you go through and you name the position besides catcher, and I'm going, okay, yeah, first base, Mervis, McGarry, the guy they just traded for, Michael Bush. Look at that guy's numbers in AAA and what he was able to do there, but struggled in the big leagues, and now even Owen Casey apparently starting to work at first base, which people were asking me about that on the message board on my channel. And I thought, you know what? I mean, the way that Casey moves and it seems like he's got really good hands,
Mm-hmm.
and he's, as a big guy, you want to get that bat in the lineup, left-handed batter. Maybe it works out.
Yeah, I guess my biggest fear this year is the whole Craig Counsell situation, when the Cubs signed him and they made him the highest paid manager in baseball history. You don't make a move like that and give him that kind of money unless you're expecting to win this season and pretty much the duration of his entire contract. But then you look at how the Cubs have kind of operated in free agency this year. Yes, they got Imanaga, but that's been it. They haven't really done much to improve that roster the way it ended last year. And my fear right now with this team is you spent the money to get Craig Counsell, which is a great decision, obviously. But you look at what Craig Counsell did in Milwaukee, working with a smaller payroll, kind of working with, I'm not going to say less talented players, but kind of getting the most out of less, if you want to say like that. Are the Cubs kind of viewing their team right now as, we got Counsell, we don't need to spend the money that we initially thought we had to spend because we have a guy that can do more with less?
I don't necessarily think it's that. I think that you've just got to be smart when you make contracts. I mean, you're dealing with Scott Boras on all of these upper echelon players, right? And I mean, Reese Hoskins just came off the board, but you don't want to get yourself in another Jason Hayward situation.
Mm-hmm.
And how many years is this guy in right field an albatross? I mean, it was just terrible, you know, and it really was like you're paying him, so he has to play, and he stunk. It was like a weak ground ball to second base.
Or a short pop fly to the outfield.
Right. I mean, it was every at bat. Like you couldn't count on him to do anything, you know, and you're paying him like he's the third batter in your lineup and he's going to be a superstar. And I get it. Like there's going to be people that say, well, you know, without him, Cubs don't win the World Series. I know. And I mean, look, but how many years was that contract? 9 years or 7
years? 8 years. And I think this is the first year that it's finally off the books.
Yeah. I mean, and they even dumped him early just because, but think about the seasons before that. A lot of times your right fielder is one of your biggest RBI and home run producers. And having a Gold Glove right fielder that's batting 220 and not hitting for power, you know, no slug. I mean, you know, but they have to because they're paying for it, you know, which is the way that the business works. So you don't want to get in that spot. There's some questions with Bellinger. I love Bellinger. I'm with Cubs fans. I want to see him back. Had the 2 bad years with the Dodgers. This was a contract year a season ago. He did really well.
And that's the key right there, because I kind of put that in a similar situation when the Cubs got Dansby last year.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of look at Dansby heading into his contract year where he was a decent hitter. He would give you about 16, 17 home runs, 70-ish RBIs. All of a sudden you get to his contract year and he has the best year of his life, comes to Chicago, and first 3 months of the season, he was doing great.
Yeah.
Last 3 months of the season, he was pretty much ice cold. He still hit 20 home runs, but it was 20 quiet home runs. That's kind of my big fear with Bellinger, too, is yes, he's played at an MVP level because he's won an MVP. Yes, he's had a lot of great seasons, but he's also had those 2.5 horrific years with the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Got a 1-year prove-it deal last year and showed that I still have something left. But if we give you a 6 or 7 year deal, how sure are we that we can get some? I'm not asking for him to play the 2018 Bellinger where he's going to hit 40 home runs, driving 130. If I sign Bellinger to a 6 or 7 year deal, I want somewhere between what he gave the Cubs last year and what he gave the Dodgers in 2018. So somewhere in between like the 26 and 46 home runs and 110-ish RBIs. But knowing that you have those 2.5 bad years in between, you have to wonder if his production was based on just basically being a 1-year contract year this year, or if what we saw last year is what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, I mean, then that's why you don't want to give this guy 7 years and $250 million. You want him, and you want it to be a fair contract. But when you're dealing with Scott Boras, it's never about a fair contract. It's about, you know, trying to rape and pillage as much as you can from the team that you're negotiating with, you know. And I get it. I mean, the business used to kind of be the other way. The owners would make all the money and the players weren't treated well, you know. And now it's like, you know, we're giving deals away knowing that the player's not even going to come close to living out contracts. And it's guaranteed. I mean, it's the only sport in our country that has guaranteed contracts. So if you get hurt the first year and it's a 7-year contract, you're going to pay for all 7 years. And that's going to hurt the amount of money that you have to build the roster moving forward. You know, it's a system that is just not good for the fan. You know, I mean, the owners and the players are duking it out, but for us, I mean, we just want a quality product, you know, and you want your team to be able to go out there and get better. But I like, even with like the Hayward contract, think what if you didn't have that contract? Maybe you could have spent some more money and those teams were close, you know, and then it's like, well, you know, people blame the owners, and it's like, well, I mean, how much money are you going to put out? You know, it's a business. I mean, so it's not like the Cubs are at the bottom of spending. We did a show on our channel and it was like, they're one of the top spenders. And then you're looking at what they're getting for the money and you're like, you know, they could probably have done a little bit better in some areas. Not going to sit here and pick on anybody, but you know, with that said, I know that they want to bring Bellinger. I mean, and if he had a different agent, they probably would have signed him to an extension last year, which is something that Boras doesn't do, you know, for the most part. And he's controlling the whole market right now. I mean, look at all those guys that are up there, the Blake Snells and, him and the Matt Chapmans, all those guys are represented. All the best players are represented by him. And so the part of the strategy is just kick the can down the road as long as you can. And then, hopefully the teams are like, hey, we either got to do this or not. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that I don't have to be Jed Hoyer and sit there and deal with this. But the other part of it is that the Cubs should have the players to compete, even if he doesn't sign. But it's all about how those guys transition. Can you get the Matt Mervis that we've seen in the minor leagues to the big leagues? Can you get Michael Busch to hit like he has in AAA to the big leagues? And I say this a lot on my channel too, being around baseball for a long time, because of the changes that we've seen in the minor league systems, like the way that player development is done, and the fact that teams are pushing guys up so fast. They're more worried about how old they are in different levels than how skilled they are in different levels, right? So you get to AAA, and the problem is that you're going to the big leagues, and the jump used to be, to me, the biggest jump used to be from A ball to AA. And it was always a tough jump from AAA to the big leagues, but you weeded so many guys out by the time they got to AAA. You felt pretty comfortable with the guys in AAA being able to come up and help you out if you needed them. Now it's basically another AA, and you get these guys up there, and then they go to the big leagues, and the jumps like this. And part of that is the player development stuff I talked about. The other part is technology. Like the technology that you have in the minor leagues is good now compared to what it used to be. And the technology you have in the big leagues is unbelievable. I mean, it's like NASA shit, so it's a tough jump, and that's going to be an issue for every team out there. And we'll see how the Cubs do that, because they're going to need to, get these young guys involved. But I think they're going to sign Bellinger. I mean, I'll just say that.
I do too.
I hope they do, but at the same time, I just hope it's a fair deal for Bellinger. I hope he's happy about it. And then I hope the Cubs are happy about it. I hope it's a deal that works for both sides. And I hope that he lives up to the contract that he gets.
That's all the time I got for you today, Mick. Before we go off, if you just want to let other listeners and viewers know where they can find your channel in case you want to pop in on that.
Yeah, I'd love to have you guys, Cubs baseball channel on YouTube, do a show every day. And then if anything breaks, we jump on and do shows. We talk a lot about the Chicago Cubs, and it's a lot of fun. And if you're a Bama fan, Bama Tailgate is my Bama YouTube channel. So I got 2 of them, football and baseball, my 2 things. And love to have all of you guys come and hang out.
Thanks again for hopping on today, Mick.
Yeah, anytime.